I never imagined my husband could be so weak, until the night I watched him get knocked out in front of me. And the worst part? While he was lying unconscious, bleeding on the ground, I gave my number to one of his attackers. I know it sounds insane, but if you knew what my life was like before that moment, you might just understand why I did it. I'm Emily, 29, and my husband Daniel, 38. When we first met at the grocery store where we both worked, me as a cashier, him in the meat department, I thought I had finally found a real man. Someone mature, stable, responsible. He was different from the broke, immature guys I used to date. He had his own place, steady income, and knew how to plan for the future. But now I don't even recognize the man I married. My ex Jake wasn't perfect, but he knew how to treat a woman. He made barely anything at his retail job, yet he always found a way to spoil me: cute outfits, surprise jewelry, little things that made me feel special. But Daniel, he treats money like it's sacred, always talking about saving for retirement and emergency funds. I get it, being responsible is good, but where's the fun? The first red flag should have been when he told me about his ex-wife taking half his savings in their divorce. Ever since then, he's been obsessed with controlling every penny. It all came to a boiling point on Christmas. I had been hinting for months about this gorgeous Michael Kors bag, nothing crazy, just $300. Instead, he got me a plain black work bag from Target, calling it practical. Practical? That wasn't the point. It was about feeling loved, appreciated. Then came New Year's Eve, and we were already fighting before we even got to the club. We went to a boring chain restaurant, because, God forbid, we splurge a little and I brought up the bag again. Daniel got defensive, ranting about budgets, responsibilities, and how we can't just spend like we're rich. Meanwhile, my friends, husbands take them out, buy them whatever they want. And here I am with Dave Ramsey in human form, counting every penny. And it wasn't always like this. When we first got together, Daniel was fun, spontaneous dates, fancy drinks, little surprises. Now I feel like I'm trapped in a boring suburban nightmare. So that night at the club, I was already over it. I ignored Daniel the whole time, smiled back at every cute guy who looked my way, and let him stew in his own jealousy. I knew it was petty, but I couldn't help it. I just wanted to feel wanted again. And then, in the smoking area, everything changed. By the time we got to the club, I was already mentally checked out. Daniel was drinking more than usual, and I barely paid him any attention. Every time a cute guy looked my way, I made sure to smile back, not because I wanted to cheat, but because I wanted to remember what it felt like to be desired. Daniel noticed, of course. He kept hovering around me, trying to pull me onto the dance floor, whispering in my ear that I looked beautiful. But the damage was already done. I felt nothing, just frustration. See, I had spent so much time convincing myself that being with a good man, a responsible, loyal, stable man, was what mattered. But no one tells you what happens when stability turns into suffocation, when every date night turns into a budget discussion, when every little purchase turns into an argument. And honestly, I was bored. I wanted passion, I wanted fun, I wanted to feel alive again. Then in the smoking area, I saw them. Two guys, younger than Daniel, probably around 25. Fit, confident, the kind of guys who walk into a room knowing every woman is looking at them. The taller one, Tyler, caught my eye immediately. He had that cocky smirk, that energy that screamed trouble. His friend Chris was cute too, but it was Tyler's attention that I felt the most. Daniel must have sensed it, because suddenly, he was beside me, wrapping his arm around my waist like some desperate claim of ownership. That's when Tyler smirked and said it. "Nice dress, your body looks incredible in it." I should have ignored it, I should have turned away. But instead I laughed, feeling the heat rush to my cheeks. Chris added, "Your curves are insane." And for the first time that night, I felt seen, appreciated, desired. Daniel, he turned red, his face blotchy with anger. "Show some respect, that's my wife." His voice was slurred, his stance unsteady. I was mortified. He sounded like an angry dad at a school dance. Tyler raised an eyebrow at me, as if to say, "Really? This is the guy you're with?" That's when Daniel did the stupidest thing possible. He shoved Tyler. Full-on pushed him like some high school tough guy. Tyler barely moved, but Chris, he stepped up immediately. I could already see how this was going to play out, and Daniel was not going to win. He was drunk, outnumbered, and way out of his league. "You don't want to do this, old man," Chris warned. But Daniel, he was too stubborn to back down. So Chris did what any guy in that situation would do. One punch. That's all it took. Daniel hit the ground like a sack of bricks. Out cold. And the worst part, I didn't rush to help him. I didn't scream his name. I just stood there, watching. And then I did something that I can never take back. I let Tyler pull me aside while Daniel lay bleeding on the ground. And when he asked for my number, I gave it to him. Without hesitation. Because in that moment, I wasn't thinking about my husband. I was thinking about myself. And how good it felt to be wanted. The moment Tyler saved his number in my phone, something shifted inside me. I should have felt guilty. My husband was unconscious on the ground, and instead of rushing to his side, I was caught in the pull of something new, exciting, and completely wrong. But here's the thing, I didn't feel guilty at all. I felt alive. Tyler leaned in close, his voice low and confident. "You deserve better than some jealous old drunk who can't handle seeing other men want you." And God help me, in that moment I believed him. Daniel was still out cold, people were crowding around him, and I was barely paying attention. Tyler and I talked as if nothing had happened, as if my husband wasn't bleeding on the pavement just a few feet away. He asked if I was okay, if Daniel was always so possessive. I laughed, actually laughed, because for once I wasn't the one being lectured. I was being understood. Then, as if the universe wanted to drive the point home, Chris pulled out his phone and started recording. "Yo, this dude got knocked out in one hit," he laughed, zooming in on Daniel's limp body. I should have been horrified, but instead, I was embarrassed for him. A part of me wanted to turn away, to pretend this wasn't happening. But another part, the part that had been ignored, controlled, and suffocated for too long. That part liked it. Daniel eventually started to come to, his face bloody and confused. But by then, Tyler and Chris were already walking away, and I was still buzzing from the adrenaline of it all. On the ride home, Daniel kept groaning, trying to piece together what had happened. He asked me over and over how he ended up on the ground. I just scrolled through my phone, already seeing Tyler's first message pop up. "Hope you got home safe. Your man clearly can't take care of that himself." I smiled. The next few days were a blur of secrecy and excitement. Daniel walked around with a huge bruise on his face, acting all quiet and brooding. Meanwhile, I was texting Tyler nonstop. He was everything Daniel was. Flirty, confident, exciting. He knew exactly what to say, how to make me feel sexy again. His texts weren't about budgets and grocery lists, they were about me. "I haven't stopped thinking about you in that dress," he'd text late at night. "You deserve to be treated like a queen." And I ate up every word. Daniel started getting suspicious. Every time I was on my phone, he'd glance over, trying to see who I was texting, but I didn't care. Let him wonder. One night, while we were arguing about money again, I let it slip. I told him he was pathetic, that a real man wouldn't nickel and dime his wife like she was some budget line item. Daniel snapped. He grabbed my phone out of my hands, scrolling through my messages before I could stop him. And then, silence. I watched as his face turned redder and redder, reading every text, every joke Tyler and I had made about him. The video, the flirting, the plan to meet up. Then, in a voice so low it scared me, he whispered, "You gave him your number while I was unconscious." I didn't answer. He kept scrolling, his breathing got heavier. Then he saw the worst part, the way I laughed about him getting knocked out. His hands shook as he turned to me. "You're laughing about me getting beat up." And I don't know why I said it, but I did. Well, maybe if you actually acted like a man, you wouldn't have gone down in one punch. His rage exploded. He threw my phone against the wall so hard it shattered. He started yelling, shaking, saying things about respect, marriage vows, betrayal. For the first time, I felt scared. So I did the only thing I could think of. I called the police. And that's when things really went south. The second I dialed 911, Daniel's whole demeanor changed. His rage turned into panic, his voice shaking as he tried to calm me down. "Emily, don't do this, let's just talk." But it was too late. When the cops arrived, things got even worse. One of the officers took one look at Daniel and smirked. "Hey, I know you. You're the guy from that knockout video." I froze. Daniel's face turned ghost white. The officer pulled out his phone, and there it was. The video of my husband getting knocked out in one punch, bleeding on the ground, while I stood there flirting with his attacker. I could see the moment Daniel's heart shattered. You knew about this," he stammered, looking at me, then at the cops, then back at me again. I said nothing. Because what could I say? That I watched the video over and over, that I even laughed at it, that I let Tyler text me while my husband was still icing his swollen face. Daniel moved out that night. And that's when things with Tyler got real. For the next few weeks, I felt like I was finally living my best life. No more arguments about budgets, bills, or responsible spending. No more feeling like I had to explain myself every time I wanted something nice. And Tyler, he made me feel wanted. Sure, we weren't going on actual dates, but he'd text me late at night, telling me how sexy I was, how he couldn't stop thinking about me. It was all so exciting, so different from the life I had with Daniel. But then, just as quickly as it all started, it ended. One night, Tyler sent me a text that hit me like a slap to the face. "Look, you're cool and all, but you're getting kinda old for me. I'm trying to live my life, you know. Can't be tied down to someone pushing 30. Blocked. Just like that, I was nothing to him. And that's when reality slapped me in the face. I was alone. Daniel had already filed for divorce. Tyler had ghosted me. And then, the universe hit me with the biggest joke of all. I took a pregnancy test. Positive. 3 tests later, still positive. And just like that, I was about to become a single mom, carrying the baby of the guy who knocked my husband out and then tossed me aside like nothing. The reality of my situation hit me all at once. I sat on the bathroom floor, staring at the 3 positive pregnancy tests, my hands shaking. This wasn't supposed to happen. This wasn't part of the plan. Tyler was gone, blocked me, moved on. Daniel, he wanted nothing to do with me. And now, I was alone, carrying the baby of the man who knocked my husband out and then disappeared. For the first time, panic set in. How was I going to do this? I barely made enough to afford rent. My job at the grocery store was nothing special. I couldn't ask Daniel for help. He would probably laugh in my face if I even tried. And worst of all, everyone knew. Work became a nightmare. The video of Daniel getting knocked out, and me giving my number to Tyler, had made its way around. Customers recognized me. One afternoon, a woman at self-checkout whispered to her friend, glancing at me, "That's the one who gave her number to her husband's attacker." Another customer, he refused to let me bag his groceries. Even my coworkers, people who used to be on my side when I complained about Daniel being controlling, turned on me. They muttered under their breath when I walked by. They gossiped in the break room, pretending like I couldn't hear. I overheard one of the newer cashiers say it straight up. "She deserves everything coming to her." And maybe they were right. Daniel, he moved on faster than I expected. Barely a month after he moved out, he started dating someone new, a younger woman from the produce department. She was everything I was. Sweet, easygoing, probably the type to clip coupons and happily split dinner checks without complaining. One night, I walked past them in the parking lot. She was laughing at something he said, clinging onto his arm like he was the greatest man in the world. And you know what? Maybe he was. For her at least. And me. I was still stuck reliving that night over and over. I watched the video again, even though I knew I shouldn't. There was Daniel, drunk, but trying to defend my honor. And there I was. Smiling, flirting, giving my number to the man who had just humiliated him. The comments under the video were brutal. Wife of the year right here. She did him so dirty, no loyalty at all. Imagine getting knocked out and waking up to your wife flirting with the guy who did it. I wanted to scream. Because no one knew what it was like to be me. No one knew how it felt to be trapped in a marriage where I felt like a budget item instead of a woman. No one knew how lonely I had been. But none of that mattered now. Because in a few months, I was going to be a mother. And I was going to have to do it alone. Sitting alone in my apartment, I finally let reality sink in. I was pregnant. Alone. And everyone thought I deserved it. I kept replaying the last few months over and over in my head. The fights with Daniel. The way I let Tyler sweep me up in his attention. The laughing, the flirting, the moment I handed over my number like my marriage meant nothing. It wasn't just one mistake. It was a series of choices. And each one had led me here. I thought about reaching out to Tyler. Maybe, just maybe, he'd care. Maybe he'd take responsibility. Maybe he'd step up and be the father that Daniel never could be. But deep down, I already knew the truth. Tyler had moved on. To him, I had been just a distraction, a way to stroke his ego for a few weeks before he got bored. I could text him, I could call him, but the outcome would be the same. He wasn't coming back. And Daniel, he had made it crystal clear that he wanted nothing to do with me. I saw it in the way he looked right through me at work, like I was just another stranger scanning groceries. I saw it in the way he smiled at his new girlfriend, how easy everything seemed for them. Daniel had moved on. He had healed. And me. I was the one left behind. For the first time in months, I finally let myself cry. Not just for what I had lost, but for what I had thrown away. For the marriage I had ruined. For the life I could have had. For the future I had destroyed with my own choices. Because deep down I knew the truth. This was Daniel's fault. It wasn't because he was too responsible or too careful with money. It wasn't because he refused to spoil me like my ex used to. It wasn't even because he got knocked out in a fight. It was me. I had been so focused on what I thought I deserved, the bags, the fancy nights out, the excitement of someone new, that I never saw what I already had. Daniel wasn't perfect. But he had loved me. And I had destroyed him. Now I was left with nothing but regrets. And soon I would be left with a baby. A baby with a father who would never know him. A baby who would grow up hearing whispers of the story behind his birth. A baby who would one day ask me about his dad, and I wouldn't know what to say. Because how do you tell your child that their father never wanted them? That their mother made the worst mistake of her life? That if she could go back, she would change everything? But I couldn't go back. I could only go forward. What would you do if you were in my position? Do you think I got what I deserved, or do you think Daniel should have fought harder for our marriage? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss more shocking real-life confessions like this. Trust me, you won't believe what's coming next.